Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More. I'm back with another real estate video. Today I'm talking about a property I probably never should have bought. There were a number of reasons I did buy it, but it has not gone well. In fact, we haven't gotten any rent for over a year now from the tenant, and there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of people to blame if you need to blame someone, including myself and the city of Cleveland and my property manager and possibly the tenant who doesn't pay. But it's been interesting. I'll talk about what has happened, why it's happened, what I can do moving forward, and then I would give some advice to people of be very careful where you buy rental properties. This is the only property I own outside of Colorado, outside of my local area, and I still probably might make money on it, but it has just been crazy the different things we've had to go through because it's in Cleveland. All right, love the likes, love the shares, love the comments, keep those coming, and love seeing new subscribers as well. Now, I know a lot of people think my channel is all just crazy stuff that happens. We have had a lot of crazy stuff happen lately with squatters, evictions, break-ins, stolen campers, all kinds of different things. And I do buy some interesting and crazy properties, but almost all those properties are within like 30 miles of me. It's pretty easy for me to manage those properties, take care of them, handle those situations. This is the only property I've ever bought outside of Colorado. And the reason I bought it was a turnkey company who I worked with, referred people to at the time, because I have my blog, social media, different stuff. And they wanted me to buy a property to show how good it would go, what kind of services they could offer, all of that. So I bought the property through them, and it never went well from the very beginning. I stopped referring them. I'm like, ooh, I don't want people to go through the same experience I did. And it just didn't work out super duper well. And it started off was that this property was supposed to be all rehabbed, rented when I bought it. I think I paid $45,000 for it, which wasn't much, but Cleveland prices were really low back then when I bought it. I think it was 2015 when I bought this property. And turns out it wasn't rehabbed. It had tenants in there who weren't paying rent and had to go through the property management company, and the turnkey company helped with that process, paid for some of the repairs because they said it was going to be rehabbed, but it still took forever to get that done and get the tenant in there. So I've owned it over the years, had a few tenants, and the tenant who's been in there now has been in there a few years, had some issues paying rent off and on, kept up, then COVID hit, and pretty much most of the rent was paid by COVID assistance from that point forward. They just pretty much stopped paying, and then the COVID assistance ran out, or they stopped qualifying for it. I'm not sure exactly. I do have a property manager here who leaves something to be desired. But since the COVID assistance ran out, that tenant has paid nothing at all, and has just been living there for free. And from everybody I talked to, including multiple lawyers, property managers, even some investors in Cleveland, this is what Cleveland wants. This is what the judges want, is tenants to just be able to live for free, pretty much is their goal. So that's why I say be careful where you invest, the towns you invest in. Make sure you know local laws and how it all works with rental properties. Places are very, 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 very different. So, California has some rules about you can't evict someone without having due cause or a really, really good reason, or you might have to pay for their relocation if you end their lease. Just all kinds of stuff goes on. There's places with rent control. There's places with crazy laws like Cleveland has, we'll talk about, and a lot going on. Many places make you register rental properties. There's restrictions on Airbnbs like Denver has, where it makes it very difficult to ever run an Airbnb. There's lots of different stuff in different towns, and that's why I really like investing local, because I know the laws here, I know how it works, and I'm very familiar with it. Now, Colorado is implementing stricter laws as we speak. Denver is implementing stricter laws. Now, some of how Colorado is changing is they're limiting late fees to $50 or 5% of rent. You can't charge any more than that. You have to wait until 7 days after the rent's due to charge those late fees. You can't evict because of late fees. You can't, basically, they're trying to make late fees not applicable at all. And then, like I said, there's some registration requirements. There's lots of different stuff changing here. So it's still, I say, I still want to do business here. We've done a couple of evictions. They've taken 45 to 60 days. Used to take 30. They increased the eviction time as well. That's another law they changed. It used to be 3 days after the court order. Now I think it's 10 days you have to wait before you can evict. Don't know why that makes a difference, but it's still better than New York and some places where it might take 6 months or a year or 20 years to evict someone if something goes wrong, or Chicago or different places like that. So for this particular one in Cleveland has done a few things. One, they require every investment property, or maybe it's just every rental property, to have a lead-based paint inspection if it's built before 1978. Mine was built in 1993 or 4, something like that. But my property management company still tried to get me to do this lead-based paint thing like 5 different times, even though I told them over and over again, I don't need to, it's not built before then. That's one reason why we didn't evict. They wouldn't go through with this eviction for months because they said before you can evict, you have to have this lead-based paint certification done. I'm like, I don't need it. And I told them so many times it was getting ridiculous, but eventually they figured it out. Now, if you do have lead-based paint, you have to pay, as a landlord, to have the test done, and you have to pay to have it remediated and taken care of if any lead-based paint is found at all on those properties. You have to register your property in Cleveland. I forget, it's $100, $200. I can't remember exactly how much the fee is. So you have to do that every year. And then I forget, there's some other restrictions too in Cleveland. But the big one that's affecting me, which seems kind of crazy, is I bought this property in my IRA. I have a self-directed IRA where I can take money in my IRA, buy real estate with it. I paid cash for it when I bought it for $45,000. But Cleveland, the judges are requiring, at least this is what the lawyers tell me, any eviction, any property that goes to court, if it's owned by a company or a trust, they have to be registered in Cleveland. Well, my IRA custodian is registered in Nevada, and they won't register in Cleveland because it's a trust, and they say they can't register the trust because it's an IRA. So we went through this for a long time, and then I talked to my property management company, and they're like, it has to be registered. And we're like, well, what can I do? Like, well, here are some statutory agents in Cleveland who will register it for you. Talk to them. So I talked to them. Again, this is weeks each time, and both of them said, sure, we'll get you registered, get it going. And then like, oh, wait, you're a trust. We can't register a trust. That's not possible. So I was like, okay, it would have been nice to know this months and months ago. Eventually, the property management, I'm like, have we offered the tenant cash for keys? Have we tried to get them out at all? Do we know she's living there? And the property management company's like, well, we think so. No, we haven't offered anything. So we offered $1,000 cash for keys, posted that, no response, nothing. They're living for rent for free, so why should they take $1,000 cash for keys? And then they did confirm they think she's living there, so that was nice. And they keep charging me every month for property management fees, even though we're getting no rent. And it's been a lot of fun with the property management company. It's Monument Real Estate is who's doing it, and their owner even told me to stop CCing him on emails because nobody's responding to me, talking to me. And I started CCing him, so I was hoping someone would respond to me, and they did. But then he got mad at me for CCing him and said his team was doing their job. I didn't need to do that, even though they weren't. And eventually he, quote unquote, said, liar, liar, pants on fire to me in one of his emails. So eventually maybe I'll bring all that out later on too. But at that point, we got some other people involved with the property management company, and me and him stopped talking. So that was pretty crazy. But anyway, so I can evict because my trust isn't registered, and according to the lawyer and the agents, they can't register my trust in Cleveland, and this has taken a very, very long time to figure out. And I actually talked to the lawyer myself just this last week, and the property management company gave me his number, said, you need to talk to him. I called him up. He's like, how'd you get this number? It was his home number, and he was sick with COVID. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But he's still super helpful and talked to me, and we talked this through it, and figured out I've got a few choices, and then another choice popped up. So my first choice was to just sell the property to someone else with the tenant here. And as a real estate investor, like that's the type of properties I buy, right? I buy the properties that have problem tenants in it for a massive discount, and then I take care of that situation. That's a lot of times why we have so many evictions and different things going on. And the properties I buy, because I know I'm buying these crazy situations and have to go through this, and I get a huge discount for that. So I could do that, but then I'm like, Now I'm the one taking this huge discount to do that, and I've heard varying ranges on what this property is worth, from like 75,000 to 100,000. But if there's a tenant in there not paying rent and they have to go through this eviction, then that will significantly decrease the value of the property. The other option I have, and I talked to my accountant and different people about this, is I could take the property out of my IRA, in which case I would incur tax penalties, pay taxes on the IRA money I had in there. That would also create quite a bit of money I would have to pay out and lose my tax status and all kinds of different, tax deferred status, all of that in this IRA. And I don't care about retirement accounts that much. I know I probably should, I just don't. But if I have one and I'm using it, and I've had it for, quite a few years, I'd rather not pay tax penalties on all that and lose all that I've had this whole time. So those were the two options I thought I had. And I went back to my IRA custodian and said, hey, this is what's going on. Is there anything you guys can do to help me? The lawyer says I can't do this. Everybody says I can't do this. And then they're like, well, yeah, you can do something else. You can create an LLC that's owned by the IRA and register that LLC in Cleveland and then transfer the property to that LLC, and then you should be able to evict. I'm like, why didn't you guys tell me this 8 months ago? But and I've talked to them. I've talked to so many different people, and it's I'm like, well, why don't we do that? They're like, okay, we'll get it set up. It's kind of expensive. I'm like, how expensive? They're like, oh, maybe $250. I'm like, seriously? So I think that's the new course of action, is I'm going to try and do that. Hopefully it's all legal and above the board and won't get me in trouble with IRS or anything. But I may have a way out of this property and to get the eviction started and moving forward. So we'll see how all that goes. The house itself actually looks really nice. This is a 2002 picture of it. And a lot of people have told me this area in Cleveland is one of the lower priced areas in Cleveland, and this has actually always looked pretty nice. The houses around it have looked pretty nice, but if you do kind of go up the street a little bit, you start to see some properties that need a little bit of work, and not horrible though. So I don't know if the neighborhood's gotten any better, or there's a boarded up window up there, or maybe just this one area is okay. There's kind of a not as pretty house. As we go this direction, I think the houses start to look a little more dilapidated. But sweet bridge right there. It's like a interstate probably. It's not the worst area in the world from pictures, at least. I've never been to Cleveland. I've never seen this property, never seen this house, so I can't give too much information on exactly what kind of neighborhood it is or anything like that. And as a licensed realtor too, I should not be saying, I'm actually prohibited from saying oh, this is a good neighborhood, this is a bad neighborhood, because all that depends on your perspective. And that's some big old abandoned building. Don't know what that is. See, that's something as a real estate investor, oh, what's that? What's going on right there? But I'm not in Cleveland, so it doesn't matter. So that's the situation with this house right now. The lawyers, both lawyers I talked to, said they've talked to a number of investors, out-of-state investors in Cleveland, and they come to Cleveland because there's good cash flow numbers, there's cheap properties, and they're like, we almost never see them make money here because they have to jump through these hoops. If there's any problems, it's a nightmare. And Cleveland is extremely tenant-friendly, and literally, they say you'll go to court and they'll ask you for different things every single time. They just try to make it as difficult as possible on landlords. So from my point of view, I'm not going to be buying any more properties in Cleveland, that's for sure. Will I ever buy out-of-state properties again? Maybe. I don't know if they'll be just houses or maybe commercial properties, but I will definitely do a lot of research about where I'm buying them and their policies and politics and different things in those places. So I know a lot of places are trying to make it harder on landlords, have rent caps, have restrictions on leases and raising rents and different taxes and different things. And for the most part, those places have the highest rents and the fewest rental properties. And what happens is if you make it harder on landlords won't invest there anymore, or they'll require higher returns to go through all those hassles, which means they won't buy properties. Rents will go up and keep going up until there's enough return there for investors to say, okay, maybe I'll start buying here again because the return is so high. But that's not until rents keep going up. So a lot of people think landlords just automatically make rents go up. We can't do that. We have to market properties and put rent figures on them that people will pay. And that all depends on what other rentals there are, the market you have, lots of different figures. And the more rentals there are in an area, usually because of supply and demand, the more affordable prices will be. The fewer rentals you have in an area, the more expensive rentals will be. All right, so that's the Cleveland house story for right now. We'll see what happens if I can get this LLC thing done and registered and then go through the eviction. And then who knows if it will be approved at that point. But right now, at this point, it's almost like I kind of want to have the eviction go through more than just getting rid of the property because the person has stayed there rent-free, trying to work the system for so long. So we'll see how all that works. And I'll keep you updated on this as well. All right, thanks for watching. Love to hear any comments you have. Anybody in Cleveland or Ohio, love to hear from you specifically as well, and have more updates on this, my other properties. And we'll have good stories too, don't worry. We have good success stories here too. All right, take care.